Hi everyone, I'm Brad McKinnon and welcome to my plastering course. This is part 1 of a 5-part series, and today is all about taping in joints, first coating. And now it's called different names around the world. Might be called taping in, foryou, drywall finishing, interior plastering, or even jib stopping as it's called here in New Zealand. But I'm going to take you through the full process of plastering this room. This is a small cabin, just a square room. It's 6 meters by 3 meters by 2.4 meters high with a sort of a sloping ceiling. And whether you're a beginner or a professional just tuning in to have a look, I'll walk you through everything and you can learn something. But it's going to be more focused on the beginner, and there's so many different ways of doing this. So I'm just going to sort of focus on the beginners out there. And first of all, we're just going to mix up some quick set. I've got some 45-minute here, and the key thing here is just adding plaster to the water. So I've got some water in the bucket and I'm just adding a little bit of powder as I go. I don't want to add too much powder because it'll just thicken up and it'll be too hard to mix by hand. So just add bits of powder as we go and mix up until you get the right consistency. I'm just mixing by hand because it's a small room. You can by all means use a mixing drill, but I'm just using a gauging trowel and just getting it to the right consistency I like for taping in. I'm using a 45-minute quick set because I'm going to tape in the internals as well. This is day 1. And by using a 45-minute quick set, by the time I finish taping in the room, that mud will be set, so I can do the internal corners as well. But the internal corners will be part 2. Tune in for that one. Now, if you're a beginner, obviously you don't have to use quick set. Let's just look at the tape I'm using. It's a fiber fuse tape. This is New Zealand's equivalent of fiber fuse. It's called jib rock tape. It's yellow, and by all means, if you want to use paper tape, you can. But if you're a beginner, I recommend using fiber fuse just to avoid any issues with bubbling. If you want to, I have a full video on what causes bubbling. If you want to check that out, it'll be linked in the description below. And just going back to what plaster to use, by all means, you can use a pre-mixed taping mud. I probably recommend that if you are a beginner, then you don't have to worry about the plaster going off in a certain time. You can just go at your own pace. The only thing is, if you have any gaps between your joints or around the room, you just want to pre-fill those first. So even using your pre-mixed plaster is fine as well. Any bigger gaps, you really want to be using some quick set in there, because quick set doesn't shrink as much as the pre-mixed stuff. So just looking at the tapered edges here, I'm going to use my 6-inch knife and my hawk, and we're just going to fill in those tapers, put the tape in, and then go over it. And the 6-inch knife goes from tapered edge to tapered edge, so that's the perfect tool for me. That's what I recommend if you're a beginner. By all means, if you're more comfortable using a pan, you can do it that way. And just showing you here how to get the mud on your knife. You don't need a heap. If you put a heap on, it's just going to fall straight off. You can come across on the angle, sort of swipe down, and it'll stick on there. And what we're going to do is we're just going to roll the wrist and roll the knife as we come along to get all that plaster on. That's how we get the plaster on the joint, by rolling that knife or the wrist as we go. If we just go on that straight angle, it's not going to come off the knife. So we need to sort of, as we come along, roll the knife, and that gets the mud on there. Now we're just going to be filling in that tapered edge. Now I don't want to see any plasterboard through the plaster. If you are using paper tape, that's what will cause bubbling, not having enough plaster covering the joint. So you want a nice layer of plaster. I like to clean up everything as I go, and just watch out for screws. There's one sticking down. You just want to just screw all those in, any loose ones hanging down. That one there actually broke the surface of the paper, and once that happens it's not really doing much, so just take it out and re-screw it. I have another video on that, screwing in drywall screws properly. I'll link that in the description as well. If you are, or if you have hung your own drywall, just make sure all those screws are in properly. So we're just gonna put the tape in, press it in as we come along. Again, if you're a beginner, you can just hold it out in front of you just to get it in that straight line, and then just lightly press that in. We don't want to be forcing all the mud out that you've just put on, so just lightly press that into the plaster. And again, clean off those edges. Now what I like to do is I like to come along and tape all my joints in first, my ceiling joints, before I come back and just fill over them again. So again, if you're a beginner, depending on how fast you're going, you might want to do 2 joints, then just come back and fill it over. By all means, if you want to fill it over as you're going, you can do that, but just a little tip, or something I prefer doing, is I like to do sort of 3 or 4 joints, put the tape in, and then come back and fill them. It just gives them that little time to settle in and calm down before you fill it over again, and you just get that real nice flat finish. If you put the plaster over straight away, which is absolutely fine, you just get a little bit of railroading, they call it, where you can see the tape sort of protruding down. But again, that's absolutely fine. We can just scrape that back when it's dry. So the best thing you can do is just keep everything tidy, keep those edges clean. If it's a nice hot day, it does dry out pretty quick on those edges. Again, rolling the wrist. I like to have 2 fingers on the back of the knife. Do whatever you like, because we're pressing that plaster, and then as we clean things off, we just hold that knife on the same angle, or if we just, once we've got the plaster on and we're just smoothing it off, just holding that knife on the same angle just to clean it off. We don't need to roll the wrist. So the rolling the wrist is to put the plaster on, or rolling the knife is to put the plaster on. Cleaning off, just hold it on that same angle. Again, I've got that tape out in front of me, just so I'm getting that nice straight line, and just sort of lightly pressing in as I go. Again, just coming from the middle, lightly pressing it in. If you come from either end to the middle, you might get a bit of a crease, so that's another little tip. Beginners, just sort of press from the middle out. Now, having that gauging trowel is a great little tool for mixing up plaster or getting plaster out of the bucket. That's my little bucket scoop, but also great for mixing up plaster. If you're a beginner, you might not have a mixing drill, so a gauging trowel, even just a cheap one from your local Home Depot, will do wonders for mixing and getting plaster out of the bucket. So again, we're just filling in that taper. Now this room is a We'll be doing square set or square stop, or the top angles. Again, different names around the world. So we are taping in right to the edges. And again, we're keeping the edges nice and clean as well, right in at the internal corners. Just makes life a lot easier. The whole process is to keep things tidy. Again, if I drop plaster, I catch it on my hawk, or if it falls on the floor, I'll pick it up straight away. Don't want to be standing in plaster, walking it all through the place. So now I've done my 4 ceiling joints. I'm going to come back and fill over the tape. Now it's very important to use the same plaster to fill over what you've already done. You don't want that first layer to dry out too much. You want it, that's what I'm talking about. If you're a beginner and you can only sort of do a couple of joints and then come back and go over them, and that's what's going to give it its strength. The tape is embedded between 2 layers of the same mix of plaster, so that's all going to dry together and bind together, and that's what's going to give it its strength. So that's very important. You don't want to just put the tape in with one mix, let that dry, come back and fill it over with another mix. So, same again, we're just rolling the knife, rolling the wrist to put the plaster on, clean off the edges. One at a time, and then I just like to come back through the middle, and that's nice, and that's just flattened it off beautifully, covering the tape. Tape's embedded in between that 2 layers of that same mix of plaster, and that's going to dry hard and strong. Another good thing about using a setting plaster is once it dries pretty rock solid. Now again, we'll just talk about quick set plaster. If you are using setting compound, look at the setting time on it. If it's the middle of summer, it's a nice hot day, you don't want to be using a long setting time like a 150, because if quick set plaster dries before it sets, it's going to lose all its strength. So summertime here, when I'm doing this, I'm using a 45-minute set, so that's definitely going to set hard before it dries out. So these plasters are all made for the seasons, so if you're going to use a 150 setting time, that would be for the winter, where it's not going to dry out as fast. You can think of it like concrete. If you're laying concrete on a hot summer's day, you see them pouring water over the top of it so it doesn't dry out too fast. It means it hasn't set. So concrete sets at a certain time, and again, they don't want it to dry before it sets. It loses all its strength. That's why they spray water on it in the middle of the summer. So similar sort of process with the quick set. I have been to a lot of jobs where quickset has failed for this reason, and it absolutely has no strength to it, and the tape just falls out in the end. So again, if you are a beginner, yeah, I recommend using the air drying taping compounds for taping in. You'll have no issues about time, and you can just go at your own pace. And the pre-mixed plasters, once they dry, they are quite hard, so they do have a bit of strength. They have a lot of glue in them. So right, we're moving on to our walls. Same process. Doesn't matter where you start. Now you might notice this room is just a square room. If you have any external corners in the room and you need to install some corner bead, I have a couple of videos on that. I'll link those in the description below. can watch those at your, if you have a external corner in your room. This is a 5-part series. Part 1 will be taping in these joints and showing how to fill screws and stuff. Part 2 is all about taping in the internal corners. Part 3 will be second coating. Part 4 third coating. And part 5 will be sanding and finishing. So I hope you learned something in these videos. And just remember that there is a multitude of ways for doing this. There's all special tools out there now that will do this for you, but there's no point pulling those out in a small room. Doing things by hand is always good. And again, this is more focused on beginners, showing them how I do it. And we got one butt joint in this room. And you can see here there's a bit of broken plasterboard on there. You can, if you have any stuff like that, you can pre-fill it, or if it's only small like this one, you can just fill it in as you go. Now if you're getting pretty good, you can start doing a few at a time. But again, just go at your own pace, just one at a time if you're just learning. Been doing this for 30 years, so I can do half a room at a time. So all these joints are taper to taper around this room, except for that one there above the door. It's a cut edge to a cut edge. We'll just treat it the same. You've just got to watch with there's no tapered edge to fill in, so it's a cut edge to cut edge, and you just want to make sure you get enough plaster on there. That's where you'll have trouble with bubbling if you're using paper tape. Just make sure you've got enough plaster under the tape. And when you press that tape in, just be careful not to force all the plaster out. So just a light press in. Again, cleaning off the edges as you go. Once we come back to fill over the tape, we want those edges clean. Otherwise we'll be picking up, it would sort of, those edges dry really fast. Now with these little ones, you might want to hold the end of the tape. You can use your hand or your hawk, like I just did then. Same here, just hold it with the hawk and press it in. Once it's pressed in, it won't move. And then, or you can use your hand, just hold it at the top with your finger and then just sort of press it in. These butt joins, I can just go straight over it straight away, because there's less plaster there. We want to just keep the plaster on there till it sets, and don't want it to dry out. Now we got the last big joint here. This is a 6 meter joint. In New Zealand we have our biggest sheets are 6 meters long, which is about the standard size of a garage here in New Zealand. Now again, you can see the screw there has penetrated the paper and it's doing nothing. So we just want that screw just below the face of the paper. If as soon as it breaks the paper, it's not doing anything. So you come across any of those, just either put a new one in next to it or just take that one out and re-screw it. Now if you've got big joints like this, and again you're just learning, you can even do half at a time. This is a good angle to see how the knife is rolling, the wrist is rolling as putting the plaster on. These tapered joints take quite a bit of mud. So once it's filled, we'll just lightly go over it, make it nice and smooth so there's no bumps or... Again, keep those edges clean, keep things tidy. Don't rush. Keep your hawk clean. Keep your tools clean. You can stop after a couple of joints and just clean your tools. I'll show you how to do that in a minute. With these ones here, you can just hold the tape out. You can even just walk along and unroll and press it at the same time. So there's a number of different ways, whatever you're comfortable with. There's no right or wrong. And again, just lightly press that in. You can see how much plaster I took out there with the knife. Not much at all. Again, keep those edges nice and tidy. So we've got our room all taped in, or our walls now. So I'm just going to come back and go over them. It's just giving them enough time just to settle down. It hasn't dried out. It hasn't got a skin on the top. If I touch that, it's still wet. So that's it. I wouldn't want to leave it any longer. Again, I've got the doors and windows closed because if you've got a breeze coming in, that'll help dry things out, and we don't want that with setting compounds. So air drying compounds are fine. They dry to the air temperature. They have a glue in them. Setting compounds are gypsum based, a chemical for setting. So again, we're just going over them now, and you can see there's a light switch there in the joint. Now what I've done there is I've just cut a bit of paper tape and just covered those wires because the electrician has already stripped those wires ready for fixing, so I didn't want to get plaster all over his coloured wires. So that's another little tip there, is to just cut a bit of paper tape and tuck them over the wires. There's another one there in that wall, you can see. And that just keeps everyone happy, keeps your electrician happy. Last thing he wants is to come in and not know which wire is which. And at the end of the job, when I finish sanding, I cut all those out. And that'll be all nice and tidy, yeah, once that's cut out. Alright, we've got our last big 6 meter joint to do. This is a transportable cabin, what I'm doing here. I do quite a lot of these. Little handy jobs. There's a little bathroom on the end there, you can see. It's just another little 3 meter by 1 meter bathroom. I won't be showing you that. I'll just be showing you this room. Same thing though. If you're thinking of doing either coving or cornice, I have videos in my library regarding that. You want to do that instead of the taping in your top angles or square set, or square stop, I call it here in New Zealand. I think in America it's called just taping in your top angles. Alright, so that's all taped in. All the joints, I should say, taped in. Now just going to keep my hawk clean, the edges clean, and we're just going to clean up the knife. Now, if you're cleaning up your knife, you can see there I'm scraping away from my hand. Always scrape away, just to avoid it slipping and cutting your hand or cutting your finger. So, but always keep your tools clean. If they're getting a bit messy, keep them clean. Makes life a lot easier. So we're just going to move on to the screws now. Now I'm just going to use my little 2.5 inch knife. Now what you'll notice here is I am filling them and then doing 2 swipes. Why am I doing that? If you do 1 swipe, it's going to, the plaster is going to sort of bulge down. Now I'm only doing 1 swipe around the edges because I'm going to go over that when I tape in the internals. And you're going to ask me, why am I doing the screws where the internals are? So again, this is more focused at beginners. Might be just easier for you just to come around and fill these screws around the internals, just to get any ones that are hanging down. If you're trying to, especially if you're a beginner or learning, if you're trying to tape in a full internal angle and you're just constantly screwing in screws, and it's a bit of annoying. This is a good little tip, I think, is to just go around and just give them a little fill in now. Because with my internals, once I tape them in, I only do 1 coat on each side after. So this just helps as well. There's a little broken bit in the corner, you can just pre-fill that. Get all these things just to make life easier down the track. So again, these ones here, just swipe, swipe, plaster in, swipe, swipe. If you've got any screws that have come out, just use the back of your knife just to press in any dangly bits and make a little indentation. But that double swipe is going to cause the plaster to suck up rather than hang down. So once it's dry, you'll have to come back and scrape it. But a little tip there. So there's quite a few little screws hanging down. Just a good little way to keep on top of things if you're just learning or beginning. So you can go around and do all this now. And sometimes some of these screws are not going to get covered by the tape, so I actually use a pre-mixed taping mud to tape in my internals. So we'll talk about that in the next video, the part 2, why I do that. But again, and also good to get them filled in with some setting compound. Setting compound doesn't shrink as much. So as well, I always sort of go around and coat these ones around the windows and doors, just because I never know what size architraves are going on. They could be 40 mils, could be 60, could be 100 in some cases, but most of the time here it's 40 mil, and a lot of those screws sometimes don't get covered by the architrave, so it's always easy just to do them all, just to avoid any callbacks. So these ones here, just one fill and 1 swipe. Same with these on the internals. You can just come around and give these a little scrape up if need be. And now's a good time just to, if there's any gaps in your internals, just to give them a little pre-fill if need be. But again, you know, professionals might be watching this going, it's a waste of time doing what he's doing now, but this is more focused at the beginner level, just trying to make things easier for people out there. And if you can make life a lot easier for yourself, then why not do it? It's only going to take 5 or 10 minutes just to go around and fill all these in this little room. Of course, if it's a whole house, I wouldn't be doing this myself. And if it's a whole house, I'd be running my machines and stuff. So, like I said earlier, there's many different ways of achieving the same outcome. So, and we all do have different methods and use different tools, and that's what makes it interesting, and that's what it's all about. So, and that's why I'm still learning even now, even 30 years on, watching videos myself of other guys and girls doing the same thing, and it's really good to still be learning, trying using different tools. Now here they've used he's just written on the wall to fill that gap in. He's cut it a bit wrong, so we'll do that for him, just filling around that electrical board. We'll just pre-fill that and we'll tape it in later. But there's a sliding door here, so what they've done is screwed it in till the glue's dried and then just remove the screws. And what I've done is gone around just with the back of my knife and just pressed in those little, when you take the screw out, causes the paper to stick out a bit, these little dangly bits, so you can just press that in with the back of your knife just to sort of indent it, and then you can fill it. But we'll just continue around the room here. You can see the ceiling here has got a slight pitch on it, very slight. So, but it's pretty much a right angle, just about. So I'm just going to use paper tape, and it's pretty good fixing. He's done a good job with the plasterboard, or hanging of the plasterboard. Another name, so many different names around the world. But any little screws sticking out, just make sure you get them in. That one here, again, I just broken the paper, and what happens is that's how you get the popping, screws popping. If it breaks the paper, it's not actually the screw moving, it's the plasterboard, because the screw isn't holding the plasterboard. You get this plasterboard springing in and out. So that's what popping is all about. You can see there a little gap there. Just might as well use up my plaster. Got some left over. Go around and pre-fill everything. Again, it's all about making life easier when it comes to taping in. Now, if you've been watching the videos on my channel, got a lot of videos up there now. Got pretty much covering everything at the moment, I think. If there's something you haven't seen that you're keen to know, just let me know in the comments. I'm happy to make videos for people that are having trouble on things. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. It really helps out. And if you have any questions after watching this video, just write them in the comments. I answer all questions. Or I answer all serious questions, I should say. Because there's a lot of not serious questions out there that come through. Of course, that's just the way it is these days. I'm sure I'll get a lot of comments regarding filling these screws in, but hey. Again, this is aimed at beginners. And there's no harm in doing it. It's actually, you know, doing this is a good thing. So that's all the screws, that's everything. joints and screws. A couple more there just to do. Again, the back of the knife, and still got a bit of plaster left over. This 45-minute set. What are we up to now? About half an hour. So still got another 10 minutes before it sets. If you are using a setting plaster, just keep an eye on the time. When you mix it up, check the time. Know what time you need to. It's going to go off. So if you are using, let's say, a 90-minute, you know, it's an hour and a half. So if you've mixed it up at 10 o'clock, you make sure right by 11:30 you've cleaned out your bucket, or you've finished doing what you're doing. Again, if you haven't finished taping in your room, it's fine. Just clean the bucket out and mix up a bit more. Keep going. And again, if you're a beginner, you might want to just stop there for the day. Tomorrow, tape in the internal joints. Absolutely fine, by all means. There's no rush. What I do now is I might have a bit of morning tea, just let that set hard, then I'll come back and tape in the internals, but we'll save that for part 2 of the video. So that's all the wall joints taped in, all the ceiling joints taped in, and all the screws filled. So we're all ready for our taping in our internals. Let's clean up, clean the tools, keep everything clean, and clean the bucket out. I just had a glove on there on that hand, if you might have noticed. That was because I was using fiberglass tape. It does get in your fingers, so that's the reason I'm wearing a glove. If you're using paper tape, you don't need to have a glove on, by all means. So yeah, about 30 minutes, 35 minutes we're at with this setting compound, so it's still fine. It's always good to have a bit more left over, well, for me anyway. If you run out, no bother at all, just mix a bit more up. Yeah, keep things clean, always keep things tidy. Another thing the gauging trowel is good for is cleaning out the bucket. You know, you can clean down the sides and then just clean out the bottom with your knife. And that curved end on the gauging trowel gets into those curved bottoms of the buckets. So, great little tool, these little gauging trowels. This is just a cheap one. It's not stainless steel or anything, but nice soft metal, so it sort of wears in. No sharp edges. That's an important thing as well. So, just a bit of water and a brush to clean that out. So yeah, and again, if you're using a setting compound, make sure you're cleaning out before the plaster is set, because it's a bit of a mission afterwards. Probably have to get a new bucket. And you can just tip that outside on the lawn. That's gypsum, that's good for your grass. Again, cleaning your tools, cleaning away from your hand. Always pressing away. If I press that way, I could slip and cut my finger, cut my hand. These knives are pretty sharp, so always press away. If you do slip, you're not going to cut yourself. Those are nice stainless steel mirror polished Komei tools. This is a DeWalt Hawk. Just a bit of water. Just loosens things up, makes things a bit easier to clean. And that's part 1 of the 5-part series. That's taping in joints and filling screw holes. Again, any comments, leave them down below. I'm happy to answer them. Part 2 is all about taping the internals in. So once all these 5 videos are up, they'll be in a playlist in a course on the channel. So if you're watching these, one will be published every week for the next 5 weeks. So if you're watching them sort of as they come out, you'll just have to wait for the following week for the next one. But if they've all been published, they'll all be in that course playlist there on my channel, so you can watch them all together. So they'll all be about, I think this is the longest one, about 40 minutes, but the other ones should be about half an hour. But yeah. So I'm Brad McKinnon. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for part 2. Hope you're learning something. We'll see you on the next one.